Welcome to the Shun podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick mention that I'd like to get another group together for the coaching course that I do if anybody is interested. Once I get enough people, usually 4 to 6 people, I'll do a 4-week course on Sunday nights going over your past, finding out who you are in the present, and dreaming about the future. If you'd like to work with me individually, I also offer individual coaching where we can work together on just about anything in your life. If you're feeling stuck somewhere in your life or you just like to work together with others to learn from one another and to kind of work through your lives with me, just go to shunnedpodcast.com/coaching and let's do this. I'm currently working with some individuals and it's an honor to do so. All right, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Today we're going to meet Naomi. Naomi was raised in one of those really controlling Jehovah's Witness families that didn't have a TV, that limited books because, they were reflective of Satan's evil world. Of course, you could read all the society's publications you wanted. Their lives, even the limited traveling that they did revolved around the kingdom work. I don't know about you, but there weren't a lot of vacations as one of Jehovah's Witnesses many times. And many times the only times you traveled were when you were going to a convention or something like that. You're going to see how, even in such a controlled environment, though, a child still has their own mind, their own thoughts. They don't always have to just go along with what is. Some children question from the beginning, really. And we're going to see how that kind of plays out for Naomi. It was really interesting what woke Naomi up. And you're even going to find out how a Buzzfeed quiz can get a Jehovah's Witness reprimanded. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Naomi.
My name is Naomi. I'm 32 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness and I am shunned.
All right, Naomi. So how did you come into the religion in the first place?
I was born into it. So my parents were also pretty much born into it. So I guess it was a family thing.
Gotcha. Do you know how many generations it goes back?
Just my parents' parents. I think my dad's parents got it in the beginning of the Second World War, just before he was born, and my mum's parents a little bit earlier, maybe the First World War.
Okay.
Just before her mother, I think when her mother was yeah. So it was sort of between the wars.
Did you get to know your grandparents then that were kind of the originators of all this?
No, unfortunately, my father's parents passed away before I was born, and my mother, for a lot of reasons, didn't have a very good relationship at all with her parents, and so my grandfather passed away when I was about 5, so I don't remember him, and then her mother passed away 7 years ago now, but again, I didn't have a relationship with her at all.
Okay. I was just wondering if you knew kind of what, the nexus of any of that was for anybody there.
I think because of the wars, they were in Holland. All of them were over there. Actually, I think they were quite poor. There was a lot of poverty and obviously the uncertainty with all the world wars going on and, the end is coming. It was sort of something for them to give them hope.
Yeah. And I think that, the end is coming kind of fits in with the whole Jehovah's Witness doctrine of the end coming, to some degree, and gives you hope.
There's always the promise of a better life, I think, where, you won't be so destitute and there won't always be world wars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big hope that they sell. So when you were born into it, what was kind of the outlook that it gave you on life as a little Jehovah's Witness?
Well, I guess we were always told that, it's us versus them. The world's run by the devil. We're the only true religion. Everybody else is bad. They're evil. They're out to get you, sort of thing. Like you're only safe when you're with other Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I didn't really understand it at the time. Like I didn't understand what bad or good was, obviously, but it was all sort of like, everything else is terrible and everybody's going to either physically harm you or spiritually harm you.
Yeah, that's a good point, about not knowing the what good or bad was. Those are things we have to be told, That's a story that we have to take on or that someone puts on us.
And say like celebrating a birthday, it's like this is bad or Christmas is bad, and you're like, but I don't understand what those things are or how they could be good versus bad.
Oh, the witnesses will tell you.
Yeah, I soon found out.
So you said that both your parents were witnesses.
Yeah,
Did you have any siblings?
I do. I've got two older brothers and a sister, but they were all sort of born about 15 or 20 years before me. So my parents had the three kids. They sort of grew up and then they had an accident, essentially. It was me 15 years later. So they weren't at home really when I was at home. I don't remember them ever really living with us. So essentially, I was sort of an only child in that way.
No, that's interesting. I've got a sister who's 20 years younger than I am, and
Mm.
that's just it's a weird place to be. It kind of makes for a weird brother sister relationship because you're almost old
Yeah,
enough to be their father.
I think, yeah. So I don't know how they viewed me. I was sort of like their little sister, but old enough or young enough to be their child in a way as well.
Yeah, yeah. So how was it then growing up at home as a young Jehovah's Witness child?
Because I was pretty much on my own there. I remember I was always very sort of lonely and sad and wasn't allowed to associate, obviously, with like worldly children or school children or anything. But then because my dad was always an elder, if not the presiding overseer, we also weren't allowed to associate with a lot of other JW families because they were deemed to be a bad influence. So it was very, very isolated, I think.
Yeah, it is interesting
Because
how
of that.
how tight they make that, isn't it? As far
Mm,
as even questioning the other young people in the
mm.
Kingdom Hall and if they can be friends or not.
And yeah, because my dad was an elder, he like, went to all the judicial committees. He knew who was doing like the wrong thing. And so it's sort of like, you can't associate with this person, you can't associate with that person. It's all very, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else is bad, even in the Jehovah's Witness religion.
Yeah, it's a pretty lonely place. It really
Mm.
is. What was kind of the environment in your home? Was there a lot of, just how were the relationships? How was it as far as like being a witness? Was was there a lot of pressure?
There was a lot of pressure. I think my parents, being obviously a lot older, they didn't really do much. They weren't keen on, I guess, playing with the little kids. So we did the witnessing, we went to meetings, and then I'd spend a lot of time alone sort of reading or playing with my pets. And we didn't have a TV because that was from the devil. And I wasn't allowed to bring books home from school or anything in case they might be demonized. So I pretty much just read all the Watchtower and Awake volumes and other books at home that my mum had deemed were suitable
Wow, that's
to read.
yeah, that's very very that's rough. So I mean, wow, you didn't. So you've got parents who don't really play with you as they're older.
Mm,
Your siblings are older and gone. You're not allowed to have friends at school.
yeah.
You can't have many friends in the Kingdom Hall. You can't read. You don't watch TV. So so what was kind of your saving grace? What was something that you did? As that kid? I mean, did you just immerse yourself totally like in the witness culture,
No,
or what'd you do?
I hated it. I read a lot. So I read all the stuff at home. And then once I started going to school, I would go to the school library and just read like almost or every book I could find, every book that was in the library, fiction, non-fiction. It was sort of just desperation. And then once I got a radio in my room, I could play music on headphones or something so they couldn't hear what I was listening to, because also popular music was from the devil at that stage. They went through the whole, if you rewind it, it's the devil like speaking messages stage at some point when I was little at home.
Wow. It
Yeah,
sounds
so
like
that was weird.
wow, yeah. It sounds like your parents were super, super strict.
Yeah.
Um, so that, so what? I guess I gotta ask, what was the relationships? What were the relationships like in the home? I mean, because it's so, that's kind of domineering,
Yeah,
and
they were very controlling. I think my mother
yeah,
especially. So my father, I don't really remember much of him. I think my mum ruled the roost mostly, and I don't think they were terribly happy either. I do remember them fighting a lot. And because they spoke Dutch, but they never bothered to teach me Dutch, so they would fight in Dutch, so I couldn't understand what they were saying. But through that, I sort of managed to. I can't speak or understand Dutch very much, but I can sort of get a gist of what's going on.
you can say angry words.
Well, I can tell by the tone what they're talking about,
Yeah,
kind of thing. So
right.
I did understand that things weren't great, and it was just, I think, my dad didn't really. I don't know if I think when I was born, it was a bit of an accident, and I think maybe my mother, from what I remember, my mother wanted me, but my dad didn't want to have another child. So obviously they can't get abortions and you can't divorce. You're just sort of stuck.
Yeah.
And so at that point, when I was a kid, I wasn't really. My dad didn't really know what to do with me much. Like my mum didn't really spend much time with me. I think my dad only liked me once I got older and could converse like an adult with him.
Yeah, that sounds very. It honestly sounds quite witnessy from what I experienced anyway. You know, much better with adults that they can or kids that they can more reason with and talk to, but not as much with innocent children. Um, so, what about? So now you said at school you weren't really obviously allowed to have many friends, but what was life like at school being that young witness kid? It sounds like you kind of, like you said, you kind of hated the whole witness thing. So
Yeah.
did you fit in at school and just live a double life or what?
Not initially. In primary school, like, I guess I didn't know any better and I tried to be good, sort of thing. And my mum set me up the first day of school with, you know, all the books to publish with all the kids and with the teacher, and sort of made a big point of making sure that everybody knew I was different. And so I did get picked on quite a lot in primary school, and no one really wanted to, I guess, be my friend because I was the weird one who couldn't celebrate birthdays or Christmas, had to have their own religious education, like outside of the normal class. And so I was sort of like the weird one. And then there were never that many, like there weren't other Jehovah's Witness kids at the school for me to be friends with for a while, because my parents like to move around and start new congregations where the need is great, kind of thing. And so at that point, I think I had one friend come in a couple of years later, and then she ended up having to be homeschooled because of the bullying. But I'd rather go to school, I guess, than stay home with my parents. So
It really sounds like you just threw in that little tidbit about your parents moving a lot and going where the need is great. It sounds like on some level you were more just a problem for them.
I think, yeah, it was sort of, they wanted to go forth on their career of starting new congregations. So we did end up settling in like one place for about 9 years then when I did primary school there. And they started the congregation, got the Kingdom Hall built and everything. And then we moved on again when I was in early high school. So it was sort of, they had a kid and there was a lot of pressure on me to be a model little Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
For their sake.
So let me ask you, why did you said that you hated it early on. Why did you hate it? Was it just the restrictions?
Yeah, and I didn't understand like why we had to be different. I didn't understand that. And I guess I've always been a little bit introverted and had a little bit of anxiety, and then being made to give like talks from when I was about 4 or 5 and being made to go out witnessing and talk to people, it always just gave me really severe anxiety. And I had to like answer at every meeting. I was being coached, like, you've got to say these answers, you've got to answer at least, 3 or 4 times because you're an eldest daughter. And you sort of always got to be on and be seen to be doing the right thing. Even from when I was so little, I'm like, but why? Like no one else's parents at school, like they don't do that and they seem like normal people. And like this just seems like ridiculous, and then a few levels beyond that.
Yeah, it really just shows how much of it is brainwashing, because this isn't normal. As a kid, even you could see that like this isn't normal behavior for humans.
No.
Yeah.
And they used to tell me stuff like, if Jehovah knows what you're doing, he's watching you all the time. Like if you do something bad, you say something bad, like he'll punish you, or, something will happen. So I remember I used to run my own sort of little testing and be like, all right, if I was told, if I killed an ant, that Jehovah would know and I'd get in trouble. So I killed an ant to see what would happen, and nothing happened. So I was like, well, upon doing my own scientific testing and then saying, if you pray to God, like Job will answer your prayers, although obviously like he won't if it's not his will. But if you pray to Satan, Satan will answer your prayers because he'll want you to come over to his side. So I'm like, all right, I'll pray to Satan and see if I get what I want. And sadly, I didn't get what I want. So it was sort of like, well, that also falls short. I don't think you're telling me the truth here.
Dang it. Come on, Satan. You had a chance.
I know. I'm like, here I am. Please. I will willingly go to your side if you exist. No, didn't work.
No. So what about then at the Kingdom Hall? How were you fitting in there? I mean, you said you had to give talks starting at like 4 or 5 and answer 3 times a meeting. Like, that's a lot of pressure. How did you do there?
I guess I just did it, and I spent as much time as I could. When I wasn't sort of not paying attention, I would learn to go to sleep during meetings. Even when I was in my like late teens and early 20s, I have this ability on a Sunday to just sit down as soon as they start the public talk, and I just fall asleep and then wake up when they finish.
Wow. They didn't make you like make a mark every time they said the word Jehovah or something?
No, actually, that was the one thing my parents didn't make me do. I think they thought that was worldly to be playing like a bingo type game.
Wow, but they still, well, yeah, it is kind of strange, but they still let you sleep. I'm
Well,
surprised.
they didn't approve of me sleeping, but I
Oh,
think it was sort of they couldn't really do that much once I was asleep. So
gotcha. Wow. So, so, how did things progress as you started to age a little bit? I assume there must have been a lot of pressure toward baptism at a point.
from when I was about 11, I think I remember they were starting to, I guess, give me the introductory talks towards baptism, or like, have you thought of this, or when are you going to go pioneering? Like, obviously, I think I was about 10 or 11 when I got made a publisher, I think. And then it was sort of like, obviously now you can go pioneering and you're going to get baptized, and I didn't really want to do that. So at one point then I was about 14, I think. My parents then moved up from sort of New South Wales down near Sydney, so it's where Sherry and that sort of lived, down there to Queensland, a bit north of where I am now, and they wanted to start another congregation there. And so we moved up there, and I started going to school ahead of time. I think they were staying at home to sell the house, and I got to move up so I could go into the new school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up living with another witness family up there. It was one that they didn't approve of, actually, but I wasn't able to stay with their close family friends that they did approve of, so eventually managed to convince them to let me stay with another family who had a daughter a little bit older than me and a son around my age. And so I sort of went to school with them and got a little bit of a more, I guess, liberal Jehovah's Witness experience for a few months while I lived with them. But then sadly, I decided I wanted to impress my parents so that when they came back up in a few months' time, I'd be baptized. So at that point, it was the impetus for me to seek out being baptized to see if I could get them to be proud of me and approve of me.
Sure. I mean, you just wanted love like anyone
Yeah.
would.
And so I'd be like, surprise, I'm getting baptized for you.
Yeah. So how did it go? So you stayed with this family for a few months. I'm sure it. I would assume you enjoyed it a lot more.
So much more.
Yeah, I mean, you had other kids around. It was a more liberal upbringing. I bet you even had a TV, didn't you?
Yeah, they had TVs and they were
See,
allowed to read Harry Potter. And...
Satan came through after all, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
So how did it feel when you went from that more liberal environment? Like, I know you said that you told your parents you wanted to get baptized because obviously you wanted their approval, but when you went back with them, like, how did you feel about that?
That was traumatizing. I remember the day they came to pick me up, I just cried like uncontrollably and hid under the house.
Oh.
At like 14 of the other place I didn't want to go, because where I was living was in the same town as where my school was, and obviously that's where my friend lived. My parents lived about 45 minutes away, and so obviously I wasn't old enough to drive or anything, so yeah. It was very isolating again. It was sort of taking me back out from away from anyone my own age, and then going back to where it was just me and my parents.
And I'm guessing when your parents were helping to like start congregations and things like that, were these more maybe rural areas where there weren't a lot of people?
Yeah, they're quite small. Like, I think the town where we moved then only had maybe less than 1,000 people, and the other one where I spent in primary school only had about 3,000 people, and it was all very rural, like dairy farms there. And then this like,
yeah, I just always thought it was kind of criminal. Maybe that's not the correct, maybe not literally criminal, but just it's absolutely horrifying that there are brothers and sisters in the organization who will have these positions and they'll have a kid and then drag their kid along through just whatever it is they want to do, and their kid is just expected to just basically shut up and go along with it, and it's just so horrible.
And then they have the expectations as well, I guess, because they're all about status and how you are perceived by other people. So, my child needs to, because my brothers went to Bethel, again, I had all that expectation that, and they were pioneers, and I think my sister pioneered for a while. There was that expectation that I would also be like them. And then I remember when we visited my brothers in Bethel once, I was maybe only like 3 or 4 years old. Apparently I'd said to one of the governing body down there who was there visiting that I wanted to go to Bethel when I grew up, because, I don't know, I was a toddler and I thought it was funny, or I thought it would make them happy. And so then it was expectation. They're like, you always said you wanted to go to Bethel since you were like a 3-year-old kind of thing. I'm like, well, I didn't know what it was when I was 3. Every time we went and visited there, the old ladies loved me and I got balloons. Of course I wanted to go there.
Yeah, when I was 3, I tried to touch the hot pan on the stove, but that doesn't mean it was smart, you
Yeah.
know?
I got given chocolate and balloons and attention. Like, of course I thought it was a great place
Of
then.
course. Oh, the reasoning of Jehovah's Witnesses on display.
Yeah.
So then you had left off. You went back with your parents, and you had told them that you wanted to get baptized. So did you get baptized pretty soon thereafter?
I did. I got baptized at 14 still. And so after that, then there was the, I guess, expectation, well, now, like, you should be a pioneer, but I was still at high school, and I made the decision to continue and finish high school. I think my dad was proud of that, because I think the rest of them, my siblings, didn't finish high school or nearly finished high school, and then sort of pulled out to go pioneering. So
wow, I'm
by that
surprised
point,
that
I
he
was
was
the
proud of that.
first. He was actually pretty good education-wise. I think he was always made a big point of getting a good education, as much as you could, I guess, around the Jehovah's Witness sort of ideas of, university is bad, education is bad. He always studied at university sort of externally at home throughout his life. So I think he was one of my saving graces, was getting me an education.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing that he did that.
So I guess I am grateful for that I managed to finish year 12. I mean, it was pretty lonely, and then I did go back. I wasn't allowed to go to university because I graduated high school at 16, and I obviously wasn't allowed to leave home, and university was bad, but I was allowed to study university externally, so by distance education.
Oh, really?
So again, that was because I think there was a family from memory that had lived somewhere near us that were like a shining example, elder, and they had a couple of pioneer sons, and one of them had just started studying at university externally as well. And so it was sort of like, oh, maybe it's not so bad. And I managed to be allowed to do that as well.
So now you're 16 and you've graduated, which at least sounds, is that young for Australia? I mean, it would be young here in the States.
It is very young. It's most of my friends in the same grade at school were at least 17, if not 18. Like, when they went to schoolies at 18, sort of the end of year 12, they were all able to drink, basically. Because the drinking age is 18 here. And I went and stayed with my sister, and I think got my belly button pierced at the end of school. So.
Rebelling quickly.
Yes.
So then, all right. So then you're 16 and you've graduated. And you're allowed to take these university classes. You're a baptized sister. But you're out of school. So what do you do with your life? Like, are you pioneering, or what kind of life are you living?
The pressure was high to pioneer, but I always somehow managed to avoid it. I think I was working as well, because my parents were very funny. Like, they wouldn't support me financially. It was like, if you want to buy anything, like your clothes, university stuff, you have to pay for yourself. So I had a job pretty much from like year 10, year 11, I was working in a cafe on weekends. And then when I graduated school, I was working there during the week. And then I'd do some accountancy stuff for my dad, and he'd pay me a little bit. So I sort of was working, and then I was studying, and then somehow managed to sort of work that so that I could only have time to go witnessing one day a week still.
Wow. So I have to ask, I don't really know how to ask this softly. Did your parents give you anything? I think what I'm trying to say is, like, did you have good times with your parents? Because it just sounds like they were busy kind of doing their own thing. You were a problem, and they kind of wanted you just to be like your own little independent adult very quickly.
Well, I guess we did do a lot of traveling when I was younger. Like, they traveled around a lot of Australia in a caravan. I suppose we had some good times sort of then, but it was always, again, very based around the religion. Like, we'd travel from convention to convention and meeting other brothers and sisters on the way, and like going to places where there were small congregations and trying to like build them up. So it was everything we did was based around the religion. There was no time where we had like an enjoyable time together that was not religious. If that makes sense. Like,
that's sad. I mean, like, I'm sure it would have meant a lot to you to have your parents just once say, like, this is our daughter, Naomi. Naomi wants to go to insert name of city or place here. Let's go there just for Naomi because she wants to.
It's more like, we should go to this place because there's a convention, or because, there's a family there we want to, talk to and help build up spiritually, or
Wow.
It was sort of, and I obviously didn't live up to their expectations with the pioneering thing or going to Bethel. So it was always like I felt they were always expecting more from me. And I was like, but I don't want to do that. Can't you just love me and enjoy me the way I am? Like, I'm at
Yeah.
home, I'm working, I'm studying. Like,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
enjoy the beach, I enjoy driving, I, have a pet.
well, yeah, you're a person, a human
I'm a
being.
person.
You shouldn't have to tell your parents, hey, look, I'm a person. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my parents would always, like, one thing that always bothered me was my parents couldn't wait for us to go to bed. Like, it wasn't just, it wasn't just like, even if we weren't, look, sometimes kids are awful, I'm sure. And I'm sure sometimes getting them in bed is like, oh, now you can relax or just be together or whatever. But it was like every night my parents were just like you just knew you were a problem that they were trying to get rid of. Like it wasn't anything even about them. It was just like, please be gone. And
Oh.
it's just not a good place to be as a kid, when you're just kind of in the way of your parents being able to live their lives. Most kids can kind of sense that and tell, like, we all
Yeah.
know where we're wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that sometimes. You sort of, unless you were, staying late at the meeting and or going pioneering and talking about pioneering, like, they didn't really, that wasn't enough. You sort of, you can go to bed now.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, well, so now you've got your what'd you say, you had your navel pierced, so you've got your rebellion started.
Yeah, I guess my sister at the time was a pioneer when I was little, but then she sort of like, I don't know, went away from the truth, whatever they say. Like, she didn't get disfellowshipped, I don't think, but she, started dating guys that weren't witnesses. She was living somewhere, I don't know, not at home at that point. And so she was like, I thought she was cool. I thought I'd want to hang out with her. And she got married when I was, I think, 7 or 8 to a Jehovah's Witness. They had a couple of kids, but he wasn't a very nice guy. I think he was abusive as well. And she had a very difficult time trying to leave him. I think some of the elders finally sort of, once they saw how bad he was, turned a blind eye to it, but she was encouraged to stay with him. And then so she was sort of like living her best life, doing whatever she wanted with 2 kids and not being a great witness. So I enjoyed that, being able to hang out with someone and, do things like go to the beach, get your navel pierced.
High expectations, like getting a
Yeah,
piercing
like,
or going to the beach.
don't try, like, I could watch TV kind of thing or anything I wanted, and, don't try to make me go witnessing or go to the
Yeah.
meetings.
So how long did that last for, or so how did things progress as you're, going toward, I assume at some point, I don't know, like in the United States, 18 is you're a legal adult. And then, you're kind of expected to choose some life paths. What was it like for you? Where did you have to, you said you were taking some university, but did you have to move out at some point, or how did you go on your
No,
own?
they didn't want me to move out. My parents were very sort of, I guess, strict about, you should stay home till you get married. And from when I was about 16, I remember my parents basically started trying to marry me off. And so I remember, like, there was some middle-aged sort of old guy. They'd invite this brother around to play cards with us and try and, introduce us to each other to see if we hit it off, or they'd invite someone around, a brother, to bring like their younger cousin or brother to meet me, or at one point they tried to set me up with someone's family's son in Brisbane, I think, because we lived a few hours away, and I went to stay with his family for a convention because they thought, he was 18, I was 16 or 17 or whatever. But he already had a girlfriend and I knew that, so we were just sort of agreed to hang out and pretend like we might be interested in each other just to get through it.
Goodness. Parents trying to marry off 16-year-olds.
I know, I was disgusted by that at one point. Or they'd bring like brothers from other congregations to come and give talks because the meetings were in my mum and dad's house. And so they'd stay for meals afterward and, try and get me to talk to their son and stuff. And so at one point I just sort of, when these things happened, I would just stop talking and not actually talk to anyone because I didn't know what to say. I was like 16, 17. I didn't want to get married. It was a ridiculous situation. So I just sort of sat there mute until it went away.
Goodness. I mean, and you mentioned something about a middle-aged guy. So
Yeah, like that was the creepiest. I don't think even my dad approved of that. That was my mom's idea. He'd come over and play cards, and I'm just like, why is this creepy guy in our house? Like,
yeah,
why would I be interested in marrying him? Like, what is this?
there's a. I mean, look, age, as they say, age ain't nothing but a number. But
But still,
sometimes it's still a number, like there's a lot of differences among the ages and stages of life. So it's there. I don't know about in Australia, but at least around here, I saw a number of marriages that were that had huge age gaps.
we
That
did as well. I think it wasn't common, but it had started happening.
yeah, and it's kind of uh, it was kind of weird at times. Just because people are at such different stages of life. I mean, I don't know what you mean by middle aged when you were talking about that guy, but let's
At
say
least 40, mid 40s kind of
okay,
thing. Like,
yeah,
much too old for a
yeah,
16-year-old.
yeah. I'm 40. I sincerely hope that I am not on the same mental or emotional level as a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, you're like, that's just very,
know?
very strange.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Um, so so how did you fare in this? Like, were you able to just kind of stave off all the suitors that were brought to you, or what did you do?
I started dating a guy when I was like 17 because my sister was living in Brisbane, so I'd go stay with her to visit her, and like she wasn't an active witness at all. But I ended up, because my friend was down there as well, and we went to meetings, got introduced to a guy who was like 7 years older than me, I think. So he was 24. And we dated like for 6 weeks, like long distance essentially. We lived 3 hours apart. We didn't really see each other, maybe every week or two. And then he mentioned something offhand one day to me, like that he couldn't get married. He couldn't marry me until I was at least 21. Like that was his plan. And I was like, but I'm 17. I don't want to get married yet. Like, and at that point, it sort of, yeah, it didn't work, obviously. It only lasted 6 weeks. I'm like, I'm not getting married. I don't know why. Like, is this my life? Sort of thing. I've
Yeah,
settling down with the first guy I'd, kissed or whatever, or even held hands with. I don't think we did anything really. I was very sort of innocent at that point still.
sure. And it is just funny though how instantly marriage is on the table, as witnesses.
Made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean you're 17 years old.
No, I just finished school. I was studying. I was like, wanted to maybe live a life a little bit, but
Yeah, I'm sure you especially did. After being raised like you were, not ever really getting to have your own life. I'm sure that you really wanted to have your own life at least for a minute.
Yeah, no, a hot minute.
So, so how did things go then? How did things progress on into your, young, as you went into adulthood?
Well, I guess the impetus for breaking up with that guy actually came with, because my sister was obviously not an active witness at the time. She was doing her own thing. She was actually seeing a disfellowship person at the time. She got introduced to a guy who was raised a Jehovah's Witness but wasn't one. And anyway, eventually she arranged, my parents were away, she arranged for him and his brother to come to my parents' house and like to drink with us. And so we got pretty drunk. I think I made out with the younger brother. She slept with the other guy and got pregnant. Ooh. Which was, of course, very awkward, seeing as the disfellowship band she was seeing at that time wasn't actually able to have children. So it was fairly obvious that she had also been unfaithful to him.
Oh,
and
wow.
so, but she didn't get disfellowshipped. She, I guess, was repentant. She moved closer to my parents, and I ended up moving in with her to help her with the baby when she was almost due, because she wasn't dating that guy yet. He was sort of just around and wanted to obviously see the baby and his only child sort of thing and help out. And they did after a year or so, and eventually ended up getting married so that they could raise the kids as Jehovah's Witness. And he got baptized a few years after that, I think. And as far as I know, they're still together. But at that point, that was really weird. And like my parents were surprisingly okay with me living with her. I think they thought I would help bring her back to the truth. But I don't know if I did anything. It was more that she got married to him and he got baptized and they went back in full together.
Are they still witnesses to this day?
As far as I know, they're my two older brothers. They're both just Bethel missionaries, elders.
Oh wow! So they're all really all the way in. Wow.
Yep. Very, 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 very fundamentalist. I think they're like the worst of the JWs you could find almost.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's horrible.
So,
So what about you then? So you are living with your sister and helping her with the kid. So where does life take you from there?
she ended up, when she got married, kicking me out. But by that time, I'd met and started hanging out with the brother who was 10 years older than me. So I was like 17, 18. He was 28, etc. And then we dated for like 6 months, got engaged, because that's what you did. It was sort of like, he was obviously, at the time, I didn't think to question too much, like, why was he still single at 28? What was wrong with him? It was more just like, oh, he's more mature than me. His family weren't devout Christians, like devout Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, his brother wasn't one, his dad wasn't one, half his family wasn't. He was a bit more sort of liberal, I guess. Like, he drank and, watched football games and went to movies that were not G-rated, sort of thing. So we hung out a bit, and I guess I decided at the terribly mature age of 18 that, of course, I would marry this person, and it got me away from my parents, which was really good.
Yeah,
I
and
think.
even then, you said he was 28 and you were 18, right?
Yeah, we were married, the year
Yeah,
after. So I was
gotcha.
19 and he was 29. So
But even then, a 10-year difference at that point is
mm.
a third of your life. Well, no, it's
I,
over half of your life, a third of his life.
I think it somehow it wasn't, I think, that bad, because I'd obviously grown up with old parents. So I was always used to hanging out with like their friends who were older than me. And
Yeah.
he was, I think, fairly immature for his age, being a guy. So it didn't feel like
Hey,
there was a
now.
huge age gap in that way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in hindsight, like, I don't even know how much even if I loved him at all. But for me, it was more an escape.
Yeah.
And obviously, once we'd started, hanging out, there's that expectation, oh, you're dating, and the elders get involved. And it's like, well, yes, we have to announce we're dating. We have to have a chaperone. It's sort of like, well, the easier thing is to just continue on with it and probably get married, rather than be like, no, we're dating, and, maybe we don't want to date. We don't like each other. It's just like, well, this is how it is now.
Yeah, I think that there's it's underrated how much pressure is put on young
Mm,
couples, or just not even young couples, just two young people of the opposite sex who happen to
mm,
talk in the same room together. Like, you don't have to do
basically.
much, and all of a sudden everyone is all on you trying to make you a couple.
I know. And so I guess we went along with that, and it was better than hanging out with some of like the other Jehovah's Witnesses. I think my dad would tell me, other kids my own age at that point, not to hang out with them because they were having parties and drinking and doing drugs. And I mean, like, I wasn't doing drugs, but certainly when my parents weren't around, I think they left me at home once for a week while they went traveling. I had a party. I certainly drank, but I managed to lie about it quite well so that they didn't think I was the culprit.
So, all right. So then you go ahead and you get married to this brother.
Mm.
How do things play out from there? How's married life start for you?
Actually pretty terrible, I think. I spent the day before the wedding in the gutter crying at his parents' house, wishing that I could end it, but obviously, you can't end it. And what do you say? Like, it's easier to go ahead with it than it is to be like, actually, I want to back out of this terrible, terrible decision I've
Well,
made.
yeah, you can, if you back out and don't do it right, you can get in trouble because witnesses view engagement as a promise, just like they view marriage as a promise.
And like,
And
we had obviously had sex before we were married. I mean, we lied about it, but it was sort of like, if I would have left, it would have been like, that might have come out. And I was, I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want my parents to not approve of me any less than they already did.
oh goodness, yeah, it's so much pressure. Wow. Um,
So we got married and went ahead with it. And he was from Canberra, which is like another day's drive, or not day, maybe a few hours south of Sydney. So it's a bit further away again. And he got a job within a few months of us being married in Canberra. And so it was like a really good reason to go, because it was really far away from my family.
oh, well, that's nice, and at least you got that buffer zone between you and
So,
your family.
and of course, I thought I was terribly mature at 19 and married. We went down there. I got a job, finished my degree externally, got a job in the government, pretty well paying job sort of thing. And, we bought a house. So I thought, this is all very terribly mature. It's boring and we don't spend much time together, or he's not interested in me at all, really. And he's very misogynistic. But, I'm an adult now. This is what adult life is like.
So speak to the misogyny. Um, because obviously there is a lot of that in the organization. I'm sure
It,
others will
yeah.
identify. What was it that got to you?
Oh, I mean, even when I was little, when they'd say, like, there was a sister I remember in one congregation we visited when I was really small, and she played the piano. They were one of the old school ones where they still had the piano and they'd play the songs there. She used to wear pants, and it was like, oh my God, like, women can't wear pants. It was like a huge scandal. And I think
Yeah.
she eventually got like reprimanded for it and all that sort of like, and then, women have to cover their head if they pray in front of brothers and all of that. Like, growing up with that, I thought, like, this is really strange. Like, why is this happening? Why are you guys like this? And, the woman has to be submissive to the man who, like, is the head of the woman, and Christ is the head of the man kind of thing. It was always like, how come we're lesser people? What makes us a lesser person?
Yeah.
And I think my dad tried to explain to me one day, like, it was because, women were physically weaker. I'm like, but, like, that's bullshit. Like, we're the weaker sex kind of thing. I'm like, well, you can't tell me that I'm weaker. Like, how dare you? But then obviously that's just how you're raised. And I think my ex-husband's father was very sort of, the man gets to do what he wants, and the woman must always, like, be in the kitchen, do all the cleaning, do all the cooking. He grew up in that sort of situation. So for me, he expected me to, like, do all of the housework sort of thing, all the washing, all the cooking. It was very like, that's what the woman does, and the man does, like, the car, and the man does, outside.
Well, hey, at least in that case, the man did something.
Yeah, did
Sometimes
something.
the man does nothing but watch TV.
But, like, yeah, he would, refuse to cook. He would refuse to do laundry.
Gotcha.
It was sort of like, oh, if you want me to do laundry sort of thing, like, I'll just do my laundry and leave yours, he'd say to me, kind of thing. Like, if you want me to do cooking, I'll just cook my own meal and you can sort yourself out, kind of thing. So it was very...
Yeah, that's not very cool. I mean,
No.
What if you said, hey, you know what, I'll do my laundry and cook my meal and screw you, I mean, that's...
Well, at one point when I was working, I did have quite long hours. I was working up to about 20 hours a day, weekends. And I enjoyed my work at the time. It actually helped get me away from excuses to not go witnessing and not go to meetings as well. But I would come home and he'd just be like, I got myself McDonald's, kind of thing. What about you? Like, you can sort yourself out, kind of thing. And I'd be like, but I asked if you could, cook me dinner, or if you could, at least if you're going to get McDonald's, get a burger for me, kind of thing. But no, he'd just do his own thing. It was sort of like, well, you went home to cook, so I got myself dinner.
That's a jerk.
I know. And then ironing it, just the stories went on. Like, it was trivial stuff, I guess, but I'd iron his shirts and then I'd get in trouble because I hung them the wrong way in the cupboard, or I'd pack his lunch, but I'd get in trouble because I, put the vegetables in the wrong order, kind of thing. And I was just like, after a while, I was just like, you know what, fuck you.
Yeah.
You can make your own food. You can iron your own shirts. I'm done with your shit.
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
Just stupid stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it has a much bigger meaning. The ironing or the laundry or whatever. That's whatever. That's trivial stuff like you said. But it's the spirit behind it, and the way he was treating you. That's awful. That's certainly not trivial.
I just felt like he was never all that really interested in me. Like, he was studying. He watched all the football games, read a lot of newspapers. Like, we never really talked. We never spent much time, I guess, together as friends at all. It was sort of, we just watch TV and drink, or
yeah,
he'd be doing something and I'd be watching TV and drinking.
Well, so you've referred to him, I think, already as your ex.
Yeah.
So how did life play out for you? How did the story go, as your marriage unfolded, and I guess, and obviously with the religion as well, because now you're here talking to me on the phone. So
yeah, it was sort of at that point when we had left my family and everything behind. I was able to get a job, a full-time job. I made some friends at work my own age. I was able to see, like, just how people are, outside of the religion, and how normal people are, and how everything is fine. It sort of backed up everything I'd always thought. And so I actually started to do a fair bit of research into it then, into like the third year of our marriage, I think it was. I found the Jehovah'sWitness.com forum, and I found JW Facts, which is run by Paul Grundy, who actually grew up with my siblings. So again, it's the family connection there.
Oh, wow. So when you say Jehovah'sWitness.com, are you talking about that forum? It's like Jehovah's-Witness?
Yeah, the forum where it's all, I guess.
Yeah, this can be off the record. Do you ever still post there anymore?
Yeah, I've just joined again. Actually, I forgot my password from the other year, and I've joined, and I've seen your posts there. So,
who are you?
I think I'm now. I think I just put my name on there. I don't really care. Years ago, I was always under like an alias, and like it was, when I discovered it, I read every single post in that forum I could for like weeks and months. I like tried to absorb it all. So I'm like, everything makes so much more sense now, and it backs up everything I've ever thought.
Yeah, it's I don't say it's, to me at least, it's not a forum for the weak-hearted.
No.
People on there, including myself, can be pretty abrupt at times.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a place with a lot of really great information.
And I remember I loved, because I was still going to the meetings at that time, Blondie's recaps of the study. I used to read those as well, and then get in the meeting and be like,
oh, that's awesome! Shout out to Blondie. She did some great work with that. I'm not sure I don't think she still does that anymore, at least not as often.
I thought I saw one a month ago or so. I saw one of her posts. It might have been an old one, maybe. I saw a post pop up in the top.
I think she does.
I just
go
to
the
latest ones.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, you found the forum, and then you found
JW Facts website, and then I got Crisis of Conscience. I ordered that and read that, and then it's by, is it Ray France, ex-governing body? Yeah, and then I got I'm Perfect, You're Doomed. It's by some girl called Kiri Abrams. You heard of her?
I've heard of the book, and I love the title.
Yeah, it's a great book. Like, it's because it's written obviously from like a younger girl's perspective. It sort of identified a lot with what she like felt and thought and said.
So what was it? What were the things that really helped wake you up? I mean, it's easy to say the forum or the books or whatever, but what was it that started you questioning, and then what were kind of the things that really got at you?
Well, I guess I'd always questioned it. From when I was little, I thought, there's something strange with this. There's something not quite right about this. Why do I have to do this? Like, why do we have to do this? Who says we're, the true religion and everyone else is going to die? Because the other religions say they're also the true ones and everyone else isn't right. So, like, who knows who's actually right? But no one could answer my questions. And so I read, being at home, I was stuck at home. My parents had the Watchtower and Awake libraries from about 1950 onward, I think, and I just read them all. And obviously the doctrine changes over time, and articles will contradict each other. And I was always asking, like, well, what does this mean? How come they used to celebrate Christmas? How come we don't now? Like, and my parents couldn't explain it to me. It was more like, there's just new light. Believe in what Jehovah says, Stop questioning things, child, kind of thing.
Yeah, Jehovah was wrong back then, okay?
I know. He had it wrong, okay?
He had it wrong, but he's got it right this time. This is what I always love, their term, present truth. Like,
and I'm like, well, clearly, like, then who's to say that what you're telling me now, like, even about like blood transfusions or something, like, who's to say they're not going to change their mind in like 5 or 10 years? Like, how can, if new light keeps happening? And of course, no one could answer that properly either. So it was sort of like, well, frankly, I'm beginning to think something smells a bit strange here.
Yeah, I mean, present truth is the most bullshit term ever. It's
or
like,
new light.
Today is
We're always
truth.
waiting for new light. Yes. There's new light coming.
There's new light coming. It was just dark before. Now we
and
can
like
see.
Obvious, the 70s, like the 1975 thing, because I'd read all the volumes about that, like through that time, and I was like, oh, what happened during this time? Like, my parents nearly sold their house. Like, they thought it was the end and everything, and I was like, but it wasn't the end. Like, we're still here.
So, wow. So you actually went back and read all the old bound volumes from like the 50s on.
I was maybe 10 or 11 at the time I started doing it. And so the whole time I was growing up, I was like, no, there's something not right about this. And then I was
wow, that's fascinating.
I guess separated from my parents and didn't spend much time with my husband, spent a lot of time at work. And I had, obviously the internet was a good resource. I was like, right, I'm going to actually look into this properly. Instead of, they always say, like, don't do research on the religion online, obviously, because, you might find out the truth.
Oh, yeah. They don't really even want you looking at their old publications for obvious reasons that you found out.
I know. So I was like, right, I'm going to look into this. And I did. And I spent like a year just like reading everything I could find. And then I was like, right, I knew it. I was right. They're wrong.
Yeah, you'll notice that their world's greatest JW.org website doesn't have the information, like before a certain years on there for some reason. I don't know why. Unless they've changed that, at least at a time they didn't. But I don't go there often.
Yeah, at the time I started reading a little bit about the child abuse cases as well, because I mean, personally, I wasn't affected by it, I guess, but I remember this is what really started pissing me off. I remember when I was younger, my dad, being an elder, would always say, like, don't sit on that brother's lap, or, don't be alone with that brother in the kitchen after the meeting, or when we'd have obviously the book studies and stuff in people's houses still, it was like, don't get too close to that one, don't let him get you alone. And I'd be like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, okay, cool. And then as I got older, and then he would sort of allude to that again in a way, I began, that all kind of clicked, and I was like, oh, it's because he was an elder and they were a child abuser and he was protecting them, and I confronted him about it. And yeah, he sort of said, like, that's what they do, like they protect the people in the congregation, Jehovah will watch them and sort of thing, like they're doing the best they can to protect everyone else from those people. And I'm like, but how do you know? Like, you see them at the meetings, how do you know what they're doing all the rest of the week when they're not at the meetings? And he's like, you just got to pray to Jehovah, believe in Jehovah, they do the best they can, and like after Armageddon in the new system, they'll be healed, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but how can you say that? Like, you're not telling, because I mean, I guess I don't want to say I was lucky, but I mean, my father did warn me who to stay away with, but they didn't warn everyone with everyone's kids who to stay away from.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
that's what I'm over here
you're
itching to ask.
responsible for this. Like, you weren't protecting everybody, you were protecting me maybe because I was your child, but didn't you feel that responsibility that you should protect the other children in the congregation as well?
Yeah.
And maybe say yeah, don't go near this person ever, or maybe not even have them as a publisher and a brother in the congregation. Like,
yeah, and if you're in a group and you're like, hey, maybe don't sit on that one's lap. Don't go anywhere with that one. We won't put you in a car group with this one. Then maybe your group is fucked up.
Yeah, and I was just like, because as a kid, you don't really question it. You're just like, oh, okay, my parents told me to do that. You don't think too much further into it. And it's only when I was, an adult and I started reading, because I remember when I was younger hearing about, they're like, oh, the evil rumors that like Satan's people are spreading about child abuse. The Catholics are all about child abuse. We're not about that. Like, we don't have that. Jehovah, we're the truth sort of thing. Jehovah will watch everyone. Jehovah will protect everyone. It was sort of like the child abuse rumors were just terrible rumors started by terrible apostates. It was all Satan. I was like, actually, no, they weren't. Once I've looked a bit further into it. Done a bit of research.
No,
everything from my childhood had clicked. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and obviously your dad knows that.
And he did, and I confronted him after I disassociated myself about it, and he was sort of like, not even guilty, just sort of like, that's what they do, you've got to believe in Jehovah. So I was like, but no, that's horrible. That makes you just as culpable as them almost. Like,
absolutely. So okay, so then you've read, obviously these are some of the issues that impacted you. You've read some books. Was there anything else, if I cut you off, that had really helped you?
No, I think that was pretty much it. And then I read that all, and I sort of didn't really talk to my ex-husband about it much, but I did like a lot of stuff on our home computer. And then he started telling me like I couldn't do it on our home computer. I wasn't allowed to look at that sort of stuff. And I was like, all right, like, we'll talk about this. Like, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I found out. This is, I believe this is wrong, etc. And then he just refused to talk about it, basically. He would leave the room. He would not even converse. And I was like, but why? Like, your brother's not a Jehovah's Witness. Your dad's not a Jehovah's Witness. Half your family, extended family, aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. And they all talk to each other still. Like, it's all fine. But I think it was more the fear that I was an apostate, that he was like, no, I can't talk about this with you. Like, he's happy to be a part of something if you didn't talk about it and didn't want to know what was wrong with it. So at that point, I sort of went, like, I can't in good conscience identify with this group. I can't be a Jehovah's Witness. I can't be a part of this anymore. So I wrote a letter of disassociation and posted it on December 31st, 2009. So I'd start the new year, new me.
Oh, awesome.
Almost had a panic attack while I was posting it because I was terrified. But I did it, and like, he took me to do it. Like, he did it with me and stuff, and just refused to talk about any of it.
So take me through that process. So, I'm someone who disassociated as well. So what was it like making that decision? And then what was it like sitting down and writing the letter? And what kind of things did you happen to include?
It was terrifying. I was like, because I knew, obviously, being brought up, being told, what happens when you're an apostate, and, you get shunned and you lose everyone. And so I was like, well, this is sort of it, but it's a point where, do I just put up with what and like pretend I believe in what they believe, or do I stand up for myself and follow what I believe. And so I was, no, I can't in good conscience be a part of this anymore. I can't, I don't want to go to work and have to tell people that I'm a Jehovah's Witness when, they've done so many terrible things. And, obviously it's kind of a cult.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
felt the same way. I didn't want that name on me anymore.
I don't want to be associated with that anymore.
No, I don't ever want to have to tell anybody that ever again.
It was just embarrassing by that point. I was just I would lie about it. I would not tell people. I'd just be like, no, I don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, and I always kind of felt too like I made this big stand when I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And for me, it was important just for me to make a stand when in leaving as well. I try to live in my own personal integrity, and I made a stand when I got baptized, and now I'm making a stand and I'm ending this. And I know it's different for everyone, and disassociation isn't for everyone. Everybody has to, judge that against their own circumstances and feelings. But for me, it was important for my wife as well. But so then what did you include in your letter?
God, it was nearly 9 years ago.
I mean, was it the type of letter that was like, here are the reasons that I am No,
I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have a fight with them. I was just I think I did list for various reasons. I believe this isn't the truth. And
right.
I'm no longer going to be associated with this. Basically, it was short, sharp, one pager kind of thing. Didn't want to talk about it. I'm just no, I don't want to have to go. I guess I didn't feel all that confident in arguing with them at that point either. Because you know how they're very manipulative and very good at arguing. I was I don't want elders coming around my house and trying to convince me by, using the scripture to talk me back into it. I'm just no, just from the bottom of my heart, morally, this is all terribly wrong and I want nothing to do with it.
Right. So did they leave you alone, or did they try to save you in their own way?
No, they'd already tried to save me beforehand, actually.
Oh, really?
Because I was wearing corporate suits to the meetings, and when I sat down, my knees were showing, and I got reprimanded on showing my knees at the hall at one point. And that was the year before. Facebook had just come in, and I was on Facebook, and I don't know if you remember, they used to have little Buzzfeed quizzes on there, sort of stuff, fun, what this are you, what that are you. It was one what mythical creature are you or something. I did it, and I got a vampire, and I don't think I even posted it, but at that point you could sort of see what everyone was doing. And of course, one of the JWs I was friends with on Facebook found out, dobbed on me and the elders who came around and tried to pray with me and do a thing about understanding that supernatural creatures are from Satan and we shouldn't want to be supernatural creatures because, obviously I wanted to be a vampire then.
It's a BuzzFeed quiz.
I know.
How seriously do you take this?
They came around to pray with me, 3 of them, and then they gave a special talk at the meeting the next week about how we shouldn't try to, play with the supernatural because it's all from Satan, and we shouldn't even associate with ourselves on Facebook with, inviting the supernatural into our homes. I think I recorded it. It was just so ridiculous, that talk, and listened to it a few times, and I was just they have actually lost their minds. What is this?
Yes, you just gave a talk from the Kingdom Hall platform about a BuzzFeed quiz.
And it was that point where I'd never gotten close to anyone else at the meetings. I didn't have that many close friends. We just had people who my ex-husband's family knew and we'd associate with on weekends, and they were my Facebook friends because that's what you did then. And I was just that's it, and deleted them all. You little dobbing, you little dirty dibber-dobbers kind of thing. I'm wow, that's the only thing you've got going on in your lives, is to look at what I do on Facebook and go to the elders about it.
Wow. And about something stupid too. I mean,
a lot of the women didn't work. They just were pioneered and stayed at home. I think I was one of the only ones who had a job, let alone a full-time job. So I'm I'm busy at work. I don't know about you guys.
So then you disassociated. How did that change your life? How did that change your relationships? And then how did you feel after doing it?
I guess I felt initially sort of after the panic subsided, it was vindicated. I've done the right thing. And then wanted to talk to my ex-husband more about it and, wanted to at least be let him know how I felt. I didn't necessarily want him to disassociate with me or anything. It was just you've got family that live together and, your parents, one's a JW, one isn't. Surely we can, this could work if we talk through it, if we maybe even go to relationship counseling or something, because he just would always refuse to talk. I'm maybe will it help if you talk to someone else and do that? And he just refused, point blank. to think about talking or to even understand it. Like, he would still lie about me and say like I was sick and stuff, and like rather than not doing it. So eventually, I think it was like 2 or 3 months after that, I moved out and I left him.
Yeah,
as well, because I'm like, this is just ridiculous. Like, if I knew the relationship was never going to last from like the beginning. Before the beginning, I was sort of like, well, I've done one major thing. I've left the religion. Why not just package it all up and do it all at the same time?
Yeah, you disassociated from him too.
Yeah, I may as well just get
level.
rid of it all, have a clean break, and just cut it.
Yeah, wow.
So that was, when I was 23.
All right. So then where do you go from there? I mean, you've lost your your husband. I don't know. Now, what about your family? Did they go into instant shun mode? I mean, it seems like they would from what you said.
Not instant. My siblings did, but my mum and dad kept writing me letters. I guess they were sort of trying to, convince me and use scriptural reasoning, and then eventually I didn't respond to their letters, or I would respond with my own reasoning. I'd sent them some quite comprehensive emails with all the stuff I'd looked into, and then my dad pretty much just came back with, well, it's, the best of a bad bunch of religions, why not stay, kind of thing. And I was like, wow, okay. No. He's just like, where basically his thing was, we're not like the Catholics. We don't abuse children. Like, they're so terrible, and like cover it up. And then obviously the Royal Commission into Child Abuse came out a couple of years ago, and it was found out all the numbers of cases that Jehovah's Witnesses had reported to the congregation, and none of them had been reported to the police. And I was just like, wow, okay, you big dirty hypocrites.
Absolutely. That's what they are.
Big dirty hypocrites. So but at that point, he was just like, like the last shred of hope was like, but it's the best of a bad bunch. No, that didn't work. So yes, once they realized like I wasn't going to respond the way they wanted to me, it was now we're going to shun you until you come back. We love you so much. Please come back, but we're not going to talk to you until you do, sort of thing.
Right. So then how did you rebuild your life?
With great difficulty, I guess. Like, I was working full time, so I was lucky. I had a good income. I applied for divorce with my ex-husband, and we did own the house together, so I had to do a property settlement on that as well, which he fought me most of the way. Another big part of the misogyny, and that was, well, he just said, you left me, you don't deserve your half of the house, which I actually owned. Like, I'd actually put half of it was my money. I'd paid for it. So I'm like, well, actually I do, and in Australia it's a no-fault divorce, so you can't refuse to divorce me, and you can't say that I don't deserve a payout for my half of the property. So I had about a year of legal costs and went to court and everything and got it and did that. So it was pretty stressful for about a year. Had a lot of stress. Was on antidepressants for a while, going through court, had 2 jobs. I was working full time and then worked nights and weekends to earn enough money to pay all my legal fees. Had a few breakdowns.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you have any support system at all? I mean,
I had friends from work. I think they were my biggest support system.
Good.
Just another couple and then another friend. So I pretty much had like 3 people who were my closest friends. And at some point, like, I would even stay at their house on a weekend if I was upset, or, I lived with a housemate, which was great. That actually went really well. I just looked for a place on, flatmates.com kind of thing, and found somewhere to live near work.
Yeah.
But that actually worked out really well. I think everything worked out really well that way. So it was just really stressful for about a year going through the court stuff, and then not having the family as well. Like, my family didn't even know I'd left my ex-husband until a few months later, when I think I emailed them and said, hey, I've applied for divorce, blah, blah, blah. And they were just like, oh, basically my dad said we never liked him anyway. I'm like, okay, great. Thanks for telling me at the point when, I was 19 and got married, and everyone was like, this is such a great idea.
You should have married the middle-aged guy when you were 17, and then you wouldn't have that problem.
I know. And like, we knew he wasn't that spiritual, he wasn't a great match. I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah. They always know everything after the fact, or at least they pretend.
But it was still that, unless you come back, you're still shunned effectively. So there was no support from there at all.
So what year was that?
That was 2010, so 9 years ago now. Gotcha.
So you've had 9 years then to really kind of rebuild your life.
In a way, but also, like, I was very bad about rebuilding your life, because as much as I didn't believe, obviously, what they taught and everything, like, the end of the world isn't coming. You're taught that the end of the world is coming, so they don't teach you how to, like, manage your finances. They don't teach you how to build a career and, look forward to having a career and, building that into your later years sort of thing, having a family and all that. Like I had no tools on how to do that. And that was another thing I guess took back to my parents in the early days and be like, you didn't teach me how to have a proper life, how to set up my life. And as a consequence, like I was bad with money. You don't know that saving for superannuation kind of thing, I guess. Do you say 401k or whatever it is?
Well, I mean, that's how they keep you stuck. You have very few options. They want you to come back because you can't hack it in the world.
Well, you can't. Like, you've never done drugs sort of thing. You don't know. Like, you don't know what drinking too much does. Like, you don't really know. And like, I was lucky. I had a good job. I kept my job the whole time sort of thing. And I sort of just floundered around though. Like, I didn't know, like, what would I save for? Like, what would I do? Yeah. And like I dated other people and, you don't really get taught. I was married at 19. I had no relationship experience. I didn't know how to interact with someone on like a proper, like healthy relationship sort of level. So your relationships don't go very well.
Yeah, I would imagine dating in the world at large after being, almost weird arranged marriages sometimes and relationships that happen in the cult. That's got to be a really difficult thing to navigate.
Oh, it was difficult. It was strange. I made bad decisions kind of thing. And sure. I guess I have got a lot of, trust and abandonment issues because of my family doing that and shunning me. And because, I was never really, never felt I was good enough for them. And they didn't love me as me as a person. They only loved me if I was a, Jehovah's Witness and did what they wanted. So I, always sought out looking for someone to love me, anybody to love me kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's tough because that will put you in bad positions in life.
It does occasionally. Like, I've had some not so great relationships. But now that, like, obviously I knew I'd left the religion, I'd divorced, I knew that, like, I didn't have to stay in a bad position, if that made sense. So I had that, strength, even though I'd try to, make a relationship work. I knew that, like, when it didn't work, I could leave, which I think was a really good thing.
So do you feel like you've kind of settled into a good life now, or the life that you kind of want? Or
the last few years, yeah, I think I sort of, as I was getting a bit older, heading towards sort of like hitting 30, sort of decided, okay, like I have to settle down. I have to, maybe I do want kids, and you've sort of got to get my life on track and obviously do that. And, I met my new husband. What is it now? 2019. I met him in 2017 and we hit it off pretty quickly and actually got pregnant pretty quickly. And so then we got married 6 months after that. And it's all sort of been amazing since then.
That's awesome. And you've got, how old is your daughter, right?
Son.
Oh, son. Sorry. How old is your son?
He's 5 months now.
Well, that's really cool. And so you've got this new little, your nuclear little family, and you've got this life. Does your past life still impact you?
Kind of, I guess. Like, I saw my family in 2012 when my grandmother died. They let me know that she died, so I went to the funeral. And then I'd pretty much, after that, it upset me whenever I saw them, and, they would still shun me. And I don't know, I always get upset sort of talking about them. I ended up sort of blocking them, I guess. So I turned it around and shunned them. And so I had changed my number several times. I changed my email address. I'd moved and not told them where I'd gone. And then I found out through mutual friends last year that my mother was sick and passed away. And so then my family did try to contact me, I think, because they didn't have my number. They tried to contact me on social media, and my dad emailed an old email address being like, your mother's sick or whatever, and then your mother's passed away. You should come to the funeral, like, blah, blah, blah. But I sort of, like, all my life, they'd been dictating to me what I could do and when I could see them, especially since I was shunned. It was always on their terms, that dictating, like, you can only see us when we want to see you kind of thing, like if it's for a memorial or for someone's funeral kind of thing. And so then they were saying, like, you have to come and see us because your mother's passed away. Like, you have to come. I was like, well, no, I don't. You've always been dictating to me my entire life what I have to do. And I don't think it's good for my mental health, and certainly not for my family, to then go and see you all again just because my mother's passed away and I've already essentially mourned her death years ago. Like, I lost my parents years ago to me. And so I just didn't respond and didn't go.
And do you feel at peace with that decision?
Yeah, I didn't I didn't get upset even finding out my mother had passed. It was more I got upset because I never had the chance to have a real family, I guess, or real parents that were normal.
I totally understand. I felt the same way when my dad died.
So it's like I'm mourning, but not the loss of her. I'm just mourning the loss of, well, I never had normal family.
Yeah, it's mourning the loss of what could have been in a normal situation, or what you never had even. I know that's how it was for me.
That was interesting. And then I'd never actually got in contact with them at all. I still haven't. My dad sent me some emails after that, a couple of months, basically, one of them implying that me leaving the religion was the reason for my mother's health to like fall and for her to become.
I hate
it was
that
essentially like
crap.
implying the cause, between me leaving the religion. She was never the same. She was never
so
well enough, and now she's passed away.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, fuck you. I'm not responding to you. And then get this, I find out that was in July last year. In November last year, he had a new girlfriend, and they married in December.
Oh, of course. Yeah. He's all broken up. Yeah.
He was like, I can never, live without your mother again. You're the reason, blah, blah, blah. And then like, surprise, I'm remarried.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that, like, I'm sorry that, I mean, and I know you've dealt with it, but I'm sorry that he put that on you, because that's just such a gross and unfair thing to do, to try to say like you're the reason she died. I mean, really, that's just such a like narcissistic thing to do.
Yeah. It's the guilt trip. They always put the guilt trip on me always. So.
Yeah, it's just so unfair, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's crap.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you saw it for what it was, and just let them wallow in their own stuff. Like, I think what you said is kind of true, where you said that you had mourned the loss of your mother already. And I think, I've thought about that a lot myself. What will or won't I do when my own mom dies?
Yeah.
As one of Jehovah's Witnesses, if she doesn't come out sometime, how would I react? And, I kind of think, I think she's already dead.
It's like that.
Yeah, that's just how it is. She chose to shun me, and if she comes out, then she'll be resurrected of sorts, and then there will actually be a resurrection, and we can talk. But otherwise, it's like you kind of have to view it that way, because if you don't, you can drive yourself absolutely crazy trying to hold on to and control relationships where the other person is toxic and is not allowing you to engage in any kind of healthy two-way relationship.
Yeah, and I guess because they don't show you that, they don't teach you that a relationship that is healthy isn't toxic, it's two-way, and you both love and support each other. So again, when you're looking for relationships, when you come out of that, you I guess head towards the toxic ones. You're drawn to those because that's what you know, and you're like, this is how relationships must be, right? Like, this is all I've ever seen, all I've ever known. And so then when you do find someone who you have like a healthy relationship full of communication and it's a two-way street, you're like, this is really strange. What is this? How does this work?
Yes. Sometimes I find myself attracted to certain forums, and I'm not even just talking, saying the Jehovah's Witness, but just online. I have always loved forums and groups, and I have found myself attracted to these ones that are highly dysfunctional at times. And it's just because that's what I grew up with. I'm comfortable there.
That level of dysfunction, you're like, okay.
Yeah, it feels like home. and then eventually I wonder, why in the world do I keep coming to this crap place and talking to these people who are horrible? Oh, well, that's because that's what I was used to. So,
Yeah.
So, you kind of mentioned where you are right now in your journey a little bit, as far as, having your family and everything. Is there anything? It sounds like there isn't. I usually ask people if there's anything that you could say to your family and friends. What would you say? Is there anything you would like to say to those who shun you?
I guess there's nothing really left to say. I mean, I'll always, hopefully with the help of therapy won't be, but always sort of wondering like why I wasn't good enough, or like why they didn't love me the way I wanted to be loved. It was sort of that, what was wrong with me, but I think in time it's sort of, you realize what was wrong with them.
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than you. So yes.
There was nothing wrong with you. It was all them. It really was.
It takes a lot of therapy, which I'm still
Yes,
undertaking.
absolutely. Well, good for you for, being proactive.
I suppose now that I'm a mum and have a family and want to have more kids, I sort of want to break that cycle of the bad parent or the not being able to show love properly to your children. Or it's been endemic in my family. My mum, from what I've heard, her parents didn't want her and didn't love her, and then she in turn didn't know how to love her children and was quite, I don't know, strange. A lot of mental illness, I think, but it obviously went undiagnosed because they don't recognize mental illness. You just obviously aren't praying enough to God, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well, I hope that, I mean, your son's 5 months old, so you probably haven't had a lot of, there's been no birthdays or
not yet, but they will be.
I guess you did have a Christmas, but I'm sure as he gets older, it will be like, I think one of my favorite things since being out, I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for kids, and I think some of that comes from my own self and I guess how I wanted my childhood or wished it could have been. And so I love seeing people that are out of the cult that have kids getting to, celebrate holidays with them and, see the magic in their kids' eyes when, they light up over these different things that we never got to experience. I think that's beautiful.
Definitely. I mean, he won't remember it, but we had, it was actually my first Christmas tree as well last year, which my husband felt a bit sad about because I'd sort of just gone to other people's Christmases the whole time since leaving. I'd never actually had my own place with my own Christmas tree. So last year was my first own Christmas tree that I got to set up and decorate and have a family Christmas, and we dressed the baby up in little Christmas clothes.
So how did it feel? How did it feel to be able to do that at your own for once?
It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Sort of this is my tree. This is my Christmas.
Yeah. It's good times. I mean, I will say, at first it can be a little awkward sometimes. I mean, I know for us, you just go over to somebody's house to celebrate a thing. And it's well, I don't know how to celebrate this. What do we do?
Well, I
here?
didn't know. When do you set up the tree? What do you do? What do you have to put on the tree? How does Christmas work? I'd always just go into other people's houses and it was already done. So
yeah, I should do a podcast how holidays work for Jehovah's Witnesses.
And I'm gonna have to learn Easter now, so we can do Easter egg hunts.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that's a good time. I mean, you'll have all these things that you'll get to have. It's just kind of cool that you're going to kind of get to have in some way your own firsts along with your son.
Yeah, and birthdays too.
Yeah, that's cool. Is there anything that you've learned since you left the Witnesses that has really impacted your life for the better? Are there any things that have really made a difference for you?
I think figuring out that other people aren't bad, everybody else isn't a terrible person, that you can actually rely on other people.
Yeah.
And find people who help you, and even strangers will, mostly at times be kind and help you out. I found I did a bit of traveling on my own in 2012 overseas and stuff, and even in countries where I didn't speak the language, I'd have to ask randoms for help, or random people would come up to me and offer me assistance or a lift or how to find the train station or even that, and take me on tours. And it was actually, I had a really great time just trusting, obviously being safe, traveling alone as a woman, but trusting that not everybody else out there is bad and trying to get you. It's not, the world isn't full of everybody trying to kill you or turn you to Satan.
People are generally pretty good. Recently, so in our cleaning business, there was a tax that was enacted in the state bordering ours. We live on the border of two states, and our business, we clean houses on both sides of the border. Well, the state that we traveled into, not the one we live in, but the other state enacted a new sales tax, and it applies to our services. And we didn't know. And it started back in July 1st of 2018, and we're recording this now in February of 2019. And I just found out because I don't live in Kentucky. I live in Indiana. And so I didn't know. Well, so I haven't been charging the sales tax on all the work we've been doing since from July to February. And so we let our clients know, And our clients started volunteering to pay the back tax, which
Oh,
would have fallen on us. I mean, we would have had to have been out of pocket for thousands of dollars, but
yeah.
everybody is stepping up and agreeing. Well, not everybody, but most people are stepping up and agreeing to pay
Yeah.
this, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's really
I
sweet.
guarantee you that if all my clients were Jehovah's
They
Witnesses,
wouldn't pay.
not a single one of those bastards would pay. They would all.
Funny story.
Yeah, you know what they would say. My wife was the one who came up with this. She said, "You know what they'd say?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Well, they'd say, oh, Satan's wicked system of things. It's just Satan trying to get you down. And they blame it all on Satan, but none of them would help to have paid the taxes, and
No,
no,
exactly.
nobody would have."
Speaking of that, my husband's mother is doing a few like renovations and stuff to her house at the moment, and we found out to my horror that she'd engaged a Jehovah's Witness builder last year, made the terrible mistake of paying him in full, and then he hasn't done the work, so she's going to have to take him to court.
Of course.
Oh my God. Why did you do that?
Yes, I had a witness hit my car once, and they didn't want to pay to fix it. I've been screwed over in so many witness deals. I worked for a brother, and we had a window washing business, and another brother, like kind of offered to. It was almost like somewhat buy it from him, but absorb it into his own cleaning business. And but it was under the condition that he would hire myself and my friend, and we would work for him as employees, but we wouldn't have all the business dealings anymore, and we could just work and make a living and be happy. And what he basically did was took the whole business and then fired us both. He just stole his business. Like, they're so low brow. I mean, just so low in the way they treat each other. And then here, of course, this brother is putting the screws to your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the bad, shady business dealings with Jehovah's Witnesses. Just no bounds.
Yeah, so I was like, why did you engage a Jehovah's Witness builder? Why didn't you ask us before?
So I guess she didn't know.
I think, once she just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Found out after she'd engaged them and didn't really think it would be an issue. But
well, I hope she sues them into oblivion.
So do I.
I know she can't. I'm sure she can just get her money back at best, but it just frustrates me.
So much.
Oh, just so many bad memories of things that happened in the group. So much drama for the truth and the happiest people on earth and all that. Hashtag best life ever.
We were always told, like, you weren't meant to be happy now. Like, you're meant to be miserable. This is, the end of days. It's Satan's system. It's all wicked, and you'll only be happy in the new system. So I guess I was raised with the thought that, like, if you're miserable, that's good. Like, you should be miserable. How dare you be happy now? You must be enjoying Satan's world too much, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, congratulations, brothers and sisters. You made it miserable enough for us. But so eventually we left. Yes. So let me ask you, do you have any dreams for your new life? Is there anything, you mentioned, expanding your family. Are there any things that you really want to get out of this life?
Started studying again. After my first degree, I sort of did over the last, 9-10 years, try to start other degrees and do that. But obviously I was still moving around a bit and figuring life out a bit, so nothing really stuck that well. So I've started studying again law this year to try and finish a degree and hopefully do something with that. So that was the first degree I ever started actually at home. When I was 16, I started a law degree initially, but it was far too difficult doing it at home with no support. So I ended up changing to business quite early on.
Wow. So that's pretty cool. So are you wanting to go in, is there a specific type of law or type of practice that you think you might like to do?
Not yet, but I'm interested in family law for obvious reasons.
Well, maybe you'll be able to help a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, in custody issues and things like that.
There is actually, I'm not sure if you've spoken to her, one of the I don't know how to describe it, one of the women who was as part of the Royal Commission, her story went up.
Okay.
I think her name was hidden as part of the actual Royal Commission here into child abuse, but she's come out since and sort of not, and she's not anonymous anymore. She's actually become a lawyer recently and wanting to help make work towards making the religion a cult. So
Wow.
there is always that to do as well.
Awesome. I wish her the best and hope she is very successful.
Me too. I meant to catch up with her last year when I'd just given birth, I think, and it obviously never worked out because I was figuring out a new baby. So I'll have to try that for this year. Catch up with her.
Well, that's really cool. Sounds like is there anything else that you were wanting to say?
Just travel, I guess, enjoy life and raise my children, I guess, happily and normally.
Yeah.
And give them tools to obviously be able to then live their own lives and, understand how the world works and understand, about planning for your future and managing finances and being emotionally secure.
Yeah, emotional security. Wow. What a novel concept.
I know. With all of us with our terrible attachment styles.
Yes. Yeah. Attachment's something I've been getting into researching a little bit. It's a fascinating thing, and we were all very damaged by our upbringings, I'm sure.
Yep.
But it's cool. It's a beautiful thing that you've got a family of your own that you want to expand, that you've got goals, you've got dreams, you've got something to look forward to. For most of us, our lives were, wait till the new system and you'll get a panda in paradise and everything will be great. And
I'd actually never heard that term before this, the panda paradise. I think my family were more like, you get to eat with the lions and tigers because they're all vegetarians. Okay.
Yeah, I always say that's just what I call it. I like to play around with that. But yeah, I think it was the Enjoy Life on Earth brochure, I think, that had a big panda on the front of it that always stuck with me. But it's just all the ridiculous promises that they had of dining with lions or whatever.
Yep.
It's there are actual things that we can do today that we can be happy and we can be good people and live good lives and not hurt people and
definitely.
And that are a whole lot happier than being stuck in a cult.
Exactly.
It's been a few months since I recorded this episode with Naomi. I just actually heard from her, and life seems to be going well for her. Her little boy is about 9 months old now and is happy and healthy. And I think I speak for everyone in wanting to see her live a happy and free life. Now you can give your son access to the things that you could only dream about when you were a kid, and that's always a beautiful thing. So go to shunnedpodcast.com if you'd like to leave a message of support for Naomi and to find the resources mentioned, including, a really fun and cool photo that she took for the episode. She also picked 2 songs to represent her journey, and I have those posted up for her. While you're there, leave a message of support for others. Pick up a t-shirt with the Shun logo on it to support the show. They're pretty cool, and I've had some good comments from wearing my own out. Follow us on Shun Podcast at YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also join the Shun Podcast Facebook group with almost 400 others that enjoy the podcast and want good community. I was actually featured in a local online news site with a 2-part article about my personal life, and I shared that in the group this month. If you'd like to hear my story, you can actually do so also on the podcast called This JW Life. There's 2 ways that you can support the podcast. If you appreciate the podcast and it's helping you in some way, you can help by supporting it financially at patreon.com/shunned, and you can do so for as little as $1 a month. At the $10 a month mark, you actually get a little plush panda wearing a Shun t-shirt as a parody of the panda paradise that we were promised. At the $20 per month mark, you not only get the panda, but we'll also do a monthly Apasta Fest, a meetup on a video platform where we can all chat and get to know one another and create community. My wife and I just sent out our first batch of pandas to those who wanted one, and we'll be getting together our first online Apasta Fest meetup soon. Your support is more than just getting a reward, though. It's encouraging to me. It helps me to defray costs and supports my efforts and the hours I put into the podcast, the Facebook group, and the other ways that I help people. So thank you for that. And if you sign up at patreon.com/shunned, I'll shout you out on here. Another way to support this is to leave a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you get podcasts for Shunned and This JW Life. Speaking to that, I think I'm at 99 reviews on iTunes for Shunned, so one more makes 100. if anybody wants to be the 100th person. And as far as this JW Life goes, I could probably use a few 5-star reviews there, because I think I've got some JW trolls throwing some 1 stars my way. So if the higher that a podcast ranks, the more people can find it and maybe get the help that they need. So while it might seem kind of silly to go leave a review or whatever, it actually does help. It helps other people to maybe get whatever it is that you're getting out of this. Like I mentioned at the outset, I offer both individual and group coaching programs to help people. If you'd like to work with me, go to shunnedpodcast.com/coaching, and you'll find the information you need there. We're going to close the episode out with the song No Hell Yet by Farrah Voyeur. You can find a link to her song, to the Patreon page for the show, to resources that were mentioned and more, not just on the website, but if you're listening on a podcast app, you can probably get it all in the app description. So as we end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
We'll curse God and die. Believe me, I've tried.